Hi, this is Brian Zipsey. Welcome, Horse Racing Nation. This is our first Roundtable webcast of the year. It's a Kentucky Derby Insider Edition. I'm joined by two of the top trainers in the business. I have Dale Romans to my left, Tom Amoss to his left, and of course Joe Christopher, personality from Churchill Downs, will be joining us. Joe, we've got great guests tonight. Let's get this baby started.
I think for us, at least for me, this is the official kickoff for Kentucky Derby Week. For these guys, they've been training these horses since they're 2-year-olds, dreaming of this day. And I'm guessing, Tom and Dale, you guys just want this day to get here at this point because, you know, a lot of things can happen between now and Kentucky Derby Day, but so far so good for both of you. Tom, let's talk about Mo Tom and how he's doing at this point leading up.
So he's doing well. He'll have his final breeze tomorrow at Churchill Downs. With the forecast, I think there are going to be a lot of horses that are going to be breezing tomorrow. I don't know what Dale's plans are, but our horse will go. It'll be an official half-mile work for us. But my horse does a lot in his works, and particularly after the work past the wire. So although he'll be clocked at a half mile, it'll probably be closer to a 6 furlong work, very similar to what he did last week.
And Dale, what's your plan leading up to a week from
I think you're right. I don't think either one of us are playing catch-up. We'd probably just soon enter today and run Saturday.
Yeah, I agree with that.
From what I see, both our horses look like they're fit and ready to roll. I haven't decided if I'm going to work tomorrow or roll the dice and wait on Saturday with my original plans. I know I am going to work Maggie tomorrow, but her race is on Friday. So we'll get her out of the way. And Cherry Wine, if he happens to something come along and him get in, he's going to go ahead and work tomorrow. I'm still on the fence. I'm waiting for that gut feeling to come along and tell me what to do with Brody. But going to this race, I mean, this will be my 8th Derby, and this, I think, is by far the best chance we've had coming into it. He's going to be the shortest price I've ever run. I've always had those middle-of-the-road horses that I think outran their price and ran well, but this colt, he'll probably be third choice at worst, I would think, and is doing superb coming into the race.
I would guess that you probably feel the same way. I mean,
Yeah, look, both Dale and my horse, both Brody's Cause and Mo Tom have the same style. We want some pace up front. I don't mean to speak for Dale, but I think that's probably true. And I like how my horse is doing. I will say that I think my horse has been a bit overhyped. My resume is not as good as Brody's Cause or a lot of the others in the race, but I've had traffic problems in my last 2 starts, particularly in Louisiana Derby, and a keen observer would note those problems, and also paying close attention to the replay of that race would certainly take note that my horse galloped out in front of the field past the wire in Louisiana Derby. I'm not going to play that game of where would I have run had I not gotten in trouble. That's for somebody else to do. I'm not going to worry about that, but my horse is doing well.
Well, we got a lot to talk about. I'm going to start with one question for both of you guys. I'm going to turn it over to Brian to continue on. But you both started your individual horses' careers on the turf at Ellis Park, right? Both.
I was on the dirt at Ellis.
The dirt at Ellis. But
Mine was turf.
Yours was turf. And then, you launched with a race that maybe didn't look that great on paper. Dale, let's start with you because I remember when Brody's Cause came to Churchill off of that first race, you named Manny Esquivel, who hadn't been riding at Churchill. I was familiar with him from Chicago, but kind of a little bit tricky. You were 33-1. Normally when a Dale Romans 2-year-old is live, you're not 33-1. You won like you should have been 4-5. And I'm like, wow, I was not expecting that. Were you?
You asking if I bet or not?
And maybe in a roundabout way.
Manny galloped
If
for
you
me.
bet, you would have been 12-1, not 33.
Yeah, Manny galloped for us for a long time when he was a kid, and his parents worked for me. So, and he had done so well, and we were also proud of what he had done in Chicago, that it was easy to let him ride the horse. And talking about starting out first time on the turf, it was more about going around 2 turns than it actually was the surface. And we thought we had a horse that needed the 2 turns and could get right into some of the bigger long races for the fall. We wanted to get him started long, and so that's why we put him on the grass. And he'd run a jump that day. I thought he would win first time out. So he couldn't be confident, even though he trained well in the first race and between the first and second. You couldn't go into the race really confident. I didn't even get to see it for about 15 minutes after the race. I was at Keeneland looking at babies. And
I got, no wonder he was 33.
The phone started blowing up. Bing, 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 bing. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? And no, I didn't bet on him, but I always loved this horse. We had 2 horses really standing out in the 2-year-old crop that year. It was him and Unbridled Outlaw. Mm-hmm. And Unbridled Outlaw was faster. But I kept telling the owners of this horse, Jason Lucia manages all the Allball family horses, The difference is a Giants Causeway doing what he's doing, or an Unborrowed Song doing what he's doing. Our horse was so far ahead of his pedigree last year as a 2-year-old. You usually don't see that out of Giants. And I said, if he makes that step forward, then he could be any kind. And he made the step, and he won the race at Churchill, and ran the way we expected him to first time. And then came back and won the Grade 1 and ran big in the Breeders' Cup. Then we come back off the layoff again, and he ran terrible at Tampa. No excuse. And Tom will tell you, we've been around long enough now, we know sometimes you just draw a line through it. Because you make up an excuse that's not true. It's better to have no information than bad information. We just drew a line through it, stuck to the course, and he backed us up in the Bluegrass.
Does that mean that we should be paying attention to the horses that beat you in the Tampa Bay Derby, being obviously Destin and the other Outwork, the horse that ran second? Are those horses based on that race that you fear, or you just think Brody wasn't himself that day? I'm not going to really.
He got beat too far. He got beat too far to say that, to use him as a gauge for how well they ran. I mean, might have ran super races on their own, but I don't think you use Brody's Cause's poor performance in the race to gauge where they ran.
For the handicappers, the term that I use for that kind of performance is too bad to be true. It's just impossible that the horse is that bad. And so those are the kind of races we put a line through.
I agree with him. And a lot of times you'd rather see that get beat like that than 2 lengths, because 2 lengths maybe you're just never going to be good enough.
Right.
You get beat 12.5 lengths with a horse that already won a Grade 1 that you know has a lot of talent. That was third in the Breeders' Cup. You just think something went wrong. We may never figure it out. We'll never know. But just stick to the plan.
Now, a lot of people immediately after the Bluegrass, those are his 2 stakes wins, both at Keeneland, the Breeders' Futurity and the Bluegrass. The immediate reaction from a lot of people was, well, he loves Keeneland. But that Churchill Downs maiden, I was there that day. That was pretty special, the way he came from so far back in the stretch.
The only places he run in stakes is Keeneland and at Tampa. So if we draw a line through the Tampa race, the only chance he had to win a stake anywhere, he didn't have a chance to win one anywhere. But if you win a race over Churchill Downs, I think that's important coming into the Derby. If you've run over Churchill Downs and run well, that's important. Because that's one factor. There's been so many horses come in there and not get a hold along with that racetrack. And Tom will tell you,
And West Coast horses in particular.
Yes, there's a lot.
I've seen many fail.
You know, Holy Bull coming in as such a big favorite, and it rained that day, and he didn't like the racetrack, and he never picked his feet up. It's the only bad race he ran in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just one less thing we have to worry about, because he's already won over it, and he's trained over it since a year ago. Basically, right now he came in. I think it was in May a year ago.
And clearly, it seems like Motan, Street Sense winner last fall at Churchill Downs, is a horse that appreciates this track as well.
Yeah, he won the Street Sense, which was a 1-turn mile, which when you look at the way he runs now, you're like, wow, how do you get up in a 1-turn mile? And he actually laid pretty close to the pace on that particular day, but he was also third in their end of the meet race, the Jockey Club, and it was a good third on a very, very wet track. And, Motan was still learning back then. I mean, look, this is a horse that broke his maiden at Ellis Park with a 48 buyer. I don't think anybody was thinking at that point, hey, this guy might, go on to be a nice horse. But we always liked him. It's a funny story. When we got into the track and you're getting these young horses ready, oftentimes you're testing them with other young horses. So the works in company that you're doing, you're matching him up in the barn with different horses and trying to figure out where he fits on the hierarchy of how good the horse is. And the first couple times we worked him, I was disappointed with how he worked. But I just wasn't allowing him to run his style of work, which is to, go a little bit slower early and finish up at the end. I was putting him with precocious young horses that were wanting to go rapid that first quarter of the mile, and Motan was keeping up with those, but it wasn't allowing him to finish. I mean, look, if you're a jogger, for instance, you go out and you jog whatever your pace is, and you finish up strong at the end. But if somebody makes you go out there and come out of your style and go very fast first mile, and you go on a 3-mile jog, you might be exhausted by the time you get to the 3rd mile. And that's Motan. He wants to lay back. And so once we in the mornings changed all that, we saw we knew he was a good horse.
Louisiana Path made a lot of sense for you. Obviously, that's your bread and butter, long stretch there. Let's talk about those prep races, because
Sure.
Obviously you didn't have great luck, well documented. After the Louisiana Derby, Corey likes to stay inside. Dale knows that. Dale rides him a lot. You ride him a lot, and it wins a lot of races for him. But to go inside, obviously, in a straightaway, when everyone saw that he had room to the outside, it almost cost you getting in the Derby. You were 21st up until a week ago.
Right.
And after that race, you were not happy about it, and it was fairly public.
Yeah, no, it was out of line. I mean, I own it. I did it. But, there's no excuse for the way I acted. But I'll just say it's a race I've always wanted to win. I'm from New Orleans. My family's there, and I was surprised at the path that was chosen down the stretch. And I shouldn't have done it, but within 20 minutes, I called Corey in the jocks room and I apologized. And that was on Saturday. The meet ended on Sunday. I drove up Monday from New Orleans to Louisville, and I was in the car that morning, and I called Corey, and we were already talking about how we could make sure that he stayed on the horse for the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah,
So you're upset at the moment, obviously, and it was
course.
almost a carbon copy of what happened in the Risen Star, maybe even a little bit longer of a delay and a block.
I don't blame the Risen Star and Corey. That was an odd move by a horse that was dead in the race and should have done what any horse does when you're finishing a race. Just stay out of everybody's way, and he didn't do that. So I really don't blame Corey for that. But Joe brings up a good point. Corey is a guy that likes to go to the rail. We see it over and over again here at Churchill Downs. He's won a lot of races doing that.
He wins races.
Yeah,
at
so
Churchill.
he's like the modern generation Cal Morrell, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's the guy that's taking over that spot. But this is a 20-horse field, and we're going to be coming from further back to Brody's cause, I believe, and we're going to have to navigate through 18, 19 horses, and I don't know what post we're going to draw, and certainly you don't know what post you're going to draw. But whatever it is, it's just going to be in Corey's hands. We got all the confidence in the world with him. He knows the horse. And one thing I will say about those trips is this horse has an unusual quick turn of foot when you ask him for it. It's very, very easy, as Corey did in the Risen Star, to say to himself, well, he's kind of laying back. Do I have any horse underneath me? And test him a little bit.
Yeah.
And you test him, he's going to go. So there's an advantage to knowing the horse. And those aren't things that I can explain to a rider in the paddock that hasn't been on him. You have to be on him to understand it.
Very true. And I'm going to bring this to Dale, too, because Dale rides Corey a lot. You guys have both won a lot of races with Corey. To me, and I was at Churchill for the first time for a full year last year, got to witness it in person. Corey Lanerie makes a difference in races at Churchill Downs. He wins races. I can't say that about the jockey in every race. Sometimes, a lot of times the best horse wins. It doesn't matter who you put on. But Corey Lanerie makes a difference at Churchill.
I got a lot of blame for Tom's bad trip in that race because for pounding his head, stay on the fence, stay on the fence, stay on the fence all the time. Because especially at Churchill Downs, it's been proven over and over and over. You have to stay ground on that racetrack.
Yeah.
And I told him I'd rather lose a few races eating horses down in there because we're going to win more in the long run. That if you save ground and try to come out at the top of the lane, it's a long stretch and you get the money. I don't know about the fairgrounds. I never spent a lot of time there, but.
Any instruction to keep him off the rail in
No.
the Derby at all?
It's Corey's horse to ride. Not only myself, but the ownership group, we have complete confidence in Corey. We really do.
It's very rare that he's going to make a mistake twice.
Yeah,
And,
and look, the last thing I want him to do is to see a spot that he thinks is the right spot and think twice.
Yeah.
No jockey can ride well like that. And Corey is like, the reason he's so good is he's like one of these cornerbacks in the NFL. He gets burned for a touchdown. Look, he's forgotten it by the next series.
Yeah.
And Corey, this is behind us.
And you can't rattle him. You can't rattle him.
Determined. Yeah.
I find myself once a week calling him and apologizing for yelling at him walking back to his tunnel. But
That's good to know.
Yeah, we've done so much.
I feel better already.
We've done so much business now that he knows just let me do it, and then he knows I'm going to be calling. I said, I'm really mad at you for making me apologize.
I do have to tell you, the class act that he is, so I got very upset at him, and he had every chance to take a shot at me in the media, and should have probably. But instead, when asked about it, he said, I think I would have reacted the same way if I was Tom. And that's a class act.
Was this the first time you ever gave Corey the business after a race?
Off the golf course? Yeah.
When you take 5 minutes.
Look. I mean, I think Dale probably operates the same way I do. I would rather have those guys in the room be a little fearful of me than be my buddy. Mm-hmm. So there are so many times after a race that I'm much tougher on a jockey. Well, I probably shouldn't even say this, but much tougher on a jockey than I even feel. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for that. I want those guys, when they get on my horse, I don't care if they want to have dinner with me after the race or not. But what I want them to do is say, oh, I'm riding something for Tom. I better know my horse and I better know my race. Because I don't want him, being the jerk that he can be after a race. And I've got absolutely no problem with that. So, when those guys get on my horse, I feel like they do their homework. They know we win a lot, and they want to ride for the stable. They don't necessarily want to ride to make Tom happy, but they want to ride for the stable because we win, just like you do. So I'm tough on them, and I don't mind it.
See, I have a different way of looking at it. I hardly ever fire a rider. If they're my stable rider, they're my stable rider. They ride the horse. Don't take them off one horse from the other. If they ride a bad race, take them off a horse, put another jockey on. When I first started my career, Pat Day taught me so much about how to handle jockeys and what jockeys think. And he told me when left alone, and he had all the confidence that he's not worrying about getting fired, and that having loaded him up with instructions, and he just went with his gut, that he felt like he was a half a second ahead of everybody in the race, that he lived a half a second in front of them. And you're talking about split second, 1/5 decisions that are made on the racetrack. I don't want them thinking, well, if I don't do what he told me, then I'm going to get fired. I want them thinking and going with their gut and reacting instead of waiting to see what happens and then react.
Right. I'm exactly the same way.
And it's
I give very little instructions in the paddock. If my horse has a habit that my rider needs to know about, I'll tell him.
Right.
If I know something about the race, or if the horse right inside of us is wearing a scoop blinker, which suggests he's going to be getting out in the race, I might bring that up. But other than that, it's have a safe trip.
Tell characteristics of a horse. They get nervous, try to keep them relaxed early. That if they get clear, then they'll try to run off, something like that. But don't be 8 lengths off at the 5/8 pole and then try to make them, because it's too fast. Things go too fast for them, and they're going to be thinking and not just reacting.
And you can't predict what's going to happen.
And good riders, it's all feel anyway. You think about what they're doing. They're going around with their toes in the irons this much in a squatted position, and they're maintaining focus on pace and vision on where horses are, and they're up in a pack this far apart going 35 miles an hour. That is as much grief as we give them. I'd be hanging on their neck just trying to stay on.
Oh, yeah.
And they're phenomenal athletes, and you have to give them the freedom of taking one thing away, just have to think about those instructions.
I'm in complete agreement with that. The trainer that legs up a jockey and walks with him all the way until he meets his lead pony to go to the racetrack to give him instructions, that's never going to be me, and that's
There's an old adage on the racetrack.
You'll blow a guy's mind like that.
There's an old adage on the racetrack: the good ones aren't going to follow them, and the bad ones can't. So why give a lot of instructions?
They put too much in their head. They need a clear head when they ride, especially a race like the Derby.
And you know what? In today's time, it's so different than it was in the past. Pat used to keep a book, and he told me he would come back and write down about his horse that he rode, so he could look it up for the next time he was on it, so he didn't have to always remember everything about every horse. Now you come out in the paddock, and this guy said, "Well, I watched the last 4 races on the video.
Right.
This happened, that happened, this happened." It's amazing the preparation that these guys are putting into their careers today compared to what they did years ago. And whether they've ridden your horse or not, they know the characteristics and know as much about your horse's races as you do when they come in the paddock, if it's the first time they've been on them.
That's the kind of guy you want in your horse. I mean, I want somebody that comes to the paddock prepared. There are a couple of guys that maybe some of their best attributes are that they study the form well. I'm not going to start naming names, but a rider that we use some here in Kentucky probably is one of the best at picking up on what pace is going to be in a race.
Name some names.
Well, Bridge Mahan, he studies the form before the race. He has a very good idea.
Very underrated rider.
Yeah, he has a very good idea of what the pace is going to be in a race and where he wants to be. Now, he's not going to do that on his own. But when he comes to the paddock, he'll say, I look at the form and it doesn't look like there's a lot of speed in here. Mm-hmm. So when I'm working on TVG at Keeneland and I see him in a race and I spot that the race is paceless, I know if he's got some speed, what he's going to do in that race, and that's an advantage.
Mm-hmm. Louis came to the paddock for the Bluegrass first time he had ridden the horse, Brody, and I hadn't watched the race, but I talked to him early in the day. I said, "You watch the race?" He said, "I got them all." He comes in the paddock. He said, "I can tell he's not a grinder. He's got to turn a foot. When we call on him, he's going to go. I got this."
He helped win that race for you too, because he got first run on.
He got first run.
Closers.
I'm not so sure Corey would have let him have first run if it wasn't the same trainer. But Corey kind of eased off and let him out a little bit, and he made first run at him, and he did from the from the half mile pole to the quarter pole. He passes 12 horses and just engulfs them, was on the lead.
Yeah, that race definitely passed the eye test. That was a very good looking race.
And my point is, he was so prepared going in. He knew that's how he won the Breeders' Maturity, and that he waited maybe a little too late in the Breeders' Cup. Not that he was going to win anyway. So he rode a perfect race. But these guys are real professionals. Once they make it to the level of riding the Kentucky Derby, they're top athletes that are dedicated to their careers.
You almost didn't make it in the Derby. We talked about that. What do you guys think of the point system? I mean, it's changed things quite a bit.
Right.
I want to ask both of you, how you go about the approach from the 2-year-old season to saying, okay, I got to put together a plan that's going to 30-something points this year. We've had years where it's been in the 20s, right?
Sure.
Every year last year. 19 was last year.
Yeah.
So we've had the point system since 2013. I paid attention to that when I became 21st. And look, I mean, everybody knew the point system going in, so to complain about it now is not right. But I do think the one change that should be made, I think that as the rule stands in Kentucky, for every race that we run in, a maiden has no preference to get in a race over a winner. It doesn't matter what the race is. And I think if that's the case in the state of Kentucky for all races, which it is, that should be the case for the Kentucky Derby. So I don't think, and I think that'll probably change next year. I think they'll probably won't give preference to a maiden over a winner. And we're going to have a maiden run in this year's Kentucky Derby, and a very good maiden at that. And I'm not pointing out that specific horse. I'm just saying that
So he couldn't get in the allowance race if he got 13 horses, but he can get in the Derby.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't particularly care for the point system. I like the old way because this way is telling you a little bit of how you have to train your horse. You have to be ready for the last 2 preps. You can't. Two of them came in and ran thirds off of prepping and turfing and going to the synthetic racetrack. Well, they've taken all the turf prepping out of it, and they've also taken any shot of any good filly coming along. If Jerry's filly was healthy and doing well, she would probably be the favorite in the race.
Yeah.
But she wouldn't have been able to run because she didn't
run against the boys first.
She had not gathered enough points. But even if they don't run, it's a fun discussion going up to Derby whether or not the filly should take on the boys. Is she going to take on the boys? So that's all
I
eliminated.
think it's good for the public.
But the worst thing I think about the point system is that Churchill uses it as a weapon.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I was going to say that.
The Illinois Derby has produced 2, in modern times Derby winners, and it should have points, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
It wore in one something.
Musket Man ran a very good.
And so it has no points.
Yeah.
It's $750,000 race that Hawthorne's willing to put up, but they don't get points to come to the Derby, and then to take them away from the Sam David
Yeah.
was that's strictly as a weapon. And everyone in our industry has always held the Derby so sacred that no one's ever taken a shot at it. But if you start using it as a weapon, you better plan on getting attacked.
The last time they tried to use the Derby against itself had to be Spend a Buck in the Jersey Derby, which is a long, long time ago. But Dale's exactly right. Look, for all the things, the changes that Churchill's made recently that I believe are good for horse racing and shows that they're at least putting an effort in for us. The one thing they did with this point system was they used this point system against tracks to try to get a higher simulcast fee and as Dale said, hold a gun to their head. There's no question about that. But, what ends up coming out after that is it's amazing. The average fan on the street is always talking points these last 3 months. So, in a sense, it's served its purpose.
It's like college basketball rankings,
right?
Football rankings.
That's exactly right.
I've gotten to the point that I almost quit thinking about it because you'll end up chasing points and not chasing a Derby victory.
I got asked after the Louisiana Derby, would you consider running in the Lexington with your horse, particularly with the outcome of the Arkansas Derby possibly knocking out the top 20?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no chance. That's not in the best interest of my horse. I'm not going to do that. So, I would never do it. You would never do it. But there might be something.
But the guy's never been in and he's getting that close.
Right.
You can see them doing the wrong thing to get it there. But that could also happen on a great point system too. They could be behind it and play catch up to
It's a
jump into
different
the
year
race.
too. Remember last year, like all the favorites won all the preps, right? So the points didn't. It was so top heavy last year. Where this year we've had different.
This is a wide
horses
open
win.
Derby.
We
This
have
is
a
a
lot of
wide
horses,
As wide open as it could possibly be.
So let's talk about that, Brian. I think we know that Nyquist is the favorite. 2 years ago it was Chrome. Last year was American Pharaoh, and Chrome was a strong favorite. American Pharaoh was a very strong favorite, although he paid almost $7 to win. So there were still other horses in the race with how top heavy it was that people were betting. Dale mentioned that Brody's Cause might be the third choice in the race, but we're talking about an 8 or 10 to 1 third choice.
Oh yeah.
Now the money will be spread out.
Yeah. Well, it's 20 horses. So when you start talking about favorites, you can't expect to see, at least this year, you're not going to see 8 to 5.
Right. You're not going to see Big Brown. You're not
No,
going to see
I
Big
think
Brown.
Nyquist had a chance of being that if the rest of the field wasn't so even, and if I don't know about you, Tom, but I'm so suspicious of the way he's coming into the race. And I don't want to try to train somebody else's horse, but if I'd won a Derby, I'd have stayed on the pattern I did before.
This is interesting.
I would have stayed on the pattern before. I'm very anxious. I don't watch many of these other horses trained around me, but I'm interested
I think
to see how he works tomorrow.
that's a touchy subject. Look.
But I think it'll take players off, whether it's right or wrong, to do it that way.
So
By the way, he's working out tomorrow, 12:15
Right.
Keeneland,
Before the first race.
Right. Look, first of all, you got a trainer that has won the Kentucky Derby, and he knows what he's doing. So questioning his tactics is a big mistake. But there are a few things that make you scratch your head. He
I
didn't
think
take,
it's going to make him a higher price than he
yeah,
would have
he
been.
didn't take him to the track right away when he got to Keeneland.
He had a little fever.
Yeah.
But those type of things that would play into him. If I was strictly sitting on the sidelines handicapping the Kentucky Derby, that would keep me from making. I mean, 7 for 7 champion
Right.
year.
And-
Seattle Flu's last one to do that.
Yeah, and
He
he doesn't get the respect for it either.
Because the filly always runs so
Right.
with him and so fast.
Yeah, but going back specifically to him and to this race, my experience is in big races, not necessarily the Derby. I've run 4 in the Derby. I've got the distinction of running last, second to last, and third to last. But I do have a 5th with my Luke.
It's the only feeling.
Female jockey, Rosie.
Yeah. But my point is that when you go into a race like this, whether it's this kind of race or a Breeders' Cup race or something like that, if you don't think your horse is 100%, if you've had something along the way, your horse is fine, but you got to be the best you can be when you're running against these horses to have any chance.
You can't have a bump in the road.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I'll tell you one thing I like about my horse that's not talked about much is he's already running his 2 14-horse fields and beat them.
Yeah.
And I think that what better schooling enclosed in both races? What better schooling could you have coming into a 20-horse field in the Kentucky Derby? And so that's another factor that's kind of out of our way. We're not too worried about.
What's the worst post position you could have?
1.
Yeah, I agree. I told my wife and my daughter that.
Thanks for asking me.
I don't know what that means. I don't want 1.
There you go. The jinx is gone.
Yeah. Right. And so look, for the handicaps, are like, well, why not 1? If you're going to be behind horses, why not just be on the rail? It's because in that first quarter mile, everybody's pushing over.
It's not only that though, because where the gate is set up.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an angle.
It's almost behind the rail, and it seems to be like, why doesn't Churchill put it a temporary like they do coming out of shooting at 3/4?
Right.
I think it would make things a whole lot better if coming out of the 1 hole if they do that. But point given would be a Triple Crown winner if it wasn't for the 1 hole.
Ferdinand won 30 years ago. That's the last 1-hole winner.
I don't think that was a 20-horse field though.
No,
Yeah, that's not modern. That's not modern Kentucky Derby as far. That's not today's Derby. That's your dad's Derby. Yeah.
Shoemaker had a good trip from the 1-hole. That's unusual. Looking at Lucky just a few years ago, we saw what happened to him from the 1-hole.
Well, Bob's had it twice. We're going to Lucky and Point Given. I mean, and 2 phenomenal horses.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When you talk about watching Nyquist train or watching some of these other horses train, I think what everyone needs to know too is horses obviously are more than what you just read in their past performances.
Mm-hmm.
They're all different. Bohemian's a tapper. He's out there, wants to go. You've got a horse like Lonnie who, he's a little bit on the lazy side. It takes an effort from the rider to even.
Well, in some departments, he's on the lazy side. In others, he's pretty aggressive.
On the smart.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that, Tom?
Look,
Just
every
say he's a
morning,
ladies' man.
every morning he comes out very happy to see you. I mean, it's just like his mind is not on his business, and it just.
But he did that
I
in
just don't
Dubai.
get it.
Tammy's in Dubai. I watched him train for 6 weeks, and you're talking about the.
I tell you, when he
ran a hell of a race.
when he gets going, which takes a long time on the track, but when he gets his stride going, he is a pretty moving horse. But it's not his first round. It's not his second round. He's
Third, fourth, they keep going with it until he gets going good.
Right, it's usually his 3rd mile, which is a lot of distance to cover for a horse in the morning.
But you know what? You watch these horses train, and you're under a microscope when you have a Breeders' Cup or a Derby horse. There's nothing going to slip by all the sharp eyes out there watching. And now that people want to tweet and stuff, I hear they tweet about your horses. And I've never been on Twitter in my life, so I don't know. But never plan on being.
I just started 2 weeks
Roman's
ago.
racing.
Anything you retweeted from Roman's Racing didn't come from me. I've never been on my Facebook.
It's
never
not
been
hard
on
for us to believe. I think it'd be a little different if you were controlling the account.
But the key to watching these horses train every day is you don't know how they train their whole life up to it. They may have been the same way their whole life.
That's a very good point.
It's change that you look for in a racehorse. And as a trainer, sometimes they say, if a horse is aggressive and on the bit all the time and he's going easy and just galloping around, well, then you've got a problem. If he's easy all the time and now he's getting aggressive, we've probably got a problem. It's change that you look for. And when we start watching the last 2 weeks for the Kentucky Derby, we don't know what they've been like their whole life.
Yeah.
They can tell. I can see if one's out there limping, doing this number.
Right.
Well, he's probably gonna run anyway.
Right. So that was always a difficulty when we did the work show for the Kentucky Derby. You're getting a little window into this horse's preparations a week or 2 weeks into the race, and you don't know his background. You don't know what he was like and all the whatever he's put together as a resume, how he trained into those races. You just know what he's doing right now at this second. And you can oftentimes get the wrong impression. Mm-hmm. So that's a very good point.
Well, as the guys that are around these horses all the time, how are your two horses coming up to this race? Is there a change for the good happening for either one? Is it more of what you've already seen as they're doing well before their previous races, or
Tom's horse looks a little underweight and limping a little bit more than I've seen him in the past.
Tom's horse,
yeah. But I tell you what, I think his horse looks great and doing good. I think my horse is doing his thing, and he's doing very good, and he's not changing either way, one way or another. It's the same as he was when he's at his best, and that's what I like. I said, this is such an even field. I'm going to take my horse on top of Amoss Asmussen. We all compete for training titles. It'd be neat if we all hit the board in the same Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, I'd love to hit the board, but obviously I'd love to win. So why don't you make that a Quinella?
Well, your horse is kind of a closer, but I mean, he's been working fast. What does that tell you anything?
Yeah. So look, my guy is he's a very laid back customer. So if you come watch him train in the mornings, you'll see a horse that's a little bit of two different horses. In the first mile of his gallop, he'll be fairly lackadaisical. He'll move well, be fairly lackadaisical. In his second mile's gallop, he'll be on the bit and really showing a beautiful stride. Dale's horse also, Dale does a lot of jogging with his horse, not necessarily that one, but just in general. But when Dale lets him gallop, he's got a great stride too. So I see a lot of similarities in that. My horse has got a lot of scope, or length as we like to call it. He's a tall horse, but he's a Mayfoal, so he's still actually developing and filling in right now. His birthday, his 3-year-old birthday, will be Kentucky Oaks Day, Motom's birthday. So
the old that was 2-year-old. I was say the old rule, he couldn't run the 2-year-old race last year.
That's right. That's exactly right. But so anyhow, I like how my horse is doing. I'm very, very confident he's going to run his race. And when I look at this year's Derby, I just feel like it's very, very wide open. I know I've never had a 3-year-old this good. And despite him not being able to run in the Risen Star, well, because of traffic, and in the Louisiana Derby because of traffic, I know what he can do. I've seen the turn of foot. I was commenting the other day, I was like, I feel like I'm the only guy in town that saw a UFO, and I'm trying to tell everybody else about it so they'll believe me. But he has got a serious turn of foot, and it's as good as I've ever seen. And Motom's getting the distance, not getting the distance, I could care less about that. I'm really looking forward to this race.
You would think on paper that 1.25 miles compared to some of the other horses in the field would be a distance that maybe would benefit you guys compared to the rest. But when you look at the race on paper, you'd both like to see 5 or 6 speed horses in there.
Right.
There really isn't. You've got Danzig Candy. You've
Hopefully,
got Outward,
right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, Danzig Candy's not even here yet, so
Not here yet.
hopefully they're on the path to
could
come
be
here.
the speed of the speed.
You can't take your horses out of their races, though.
No,
So
I think that would be a mistake.
I think if they're going slow, it will naturally be closer.
Yeah.
and that, especially that distance, right?
Yeah, and a lot of times in those, if you get a horse that can really be a speed horse, he can drag everybody else out, and we'll all be going too fast, and nobody have a kick at the end, too.
Yeah.
So it's a delicate balance. And I know Brody has to turn a foot enough, but I think he could lay closer if they're going slow and still kick on home. It's that grinder that you really are a victim of pace with.
Yeah.
You have a horse that just keeps getting stronger slowly, like a freight train that doesn't have a Ferrari 0 to 60. Those horses are the ones that are the most victim of pace. But if you have a horse that can accelerate on a dime, like my horse can, and Tom, the way he's talking about his horse, then the pace isn't quite as important, even though we'd like to come from behind.
Yeah, I would say one thing. I'll push back a little bit on that. I think that a quick pace spreads the field out. And look, I know I'm going to have to go through 16, 17, 18 horses. I don't need, I don't need there to be 15 lengths between first and last in the Derby when I'm trying to make a move. I want there to be 20, 25. So I'm hopeful that there is a lot of pace. And look, when we covered this race for TV, and there were times where I didn't think there was a lot of pace in there, and I was always wrong. There's always pace in the Derby.
It reverses so much time in all of racing.
Horses
You handicap.
get
How many people
Yeah.
look at all this pace I'm going to take back, or no pace, so I'm going to let mine run. And it flip-flops exactly what you think it would. But in the history of the Derby, you need to be fairly close turning for home.
There's no doubt about that.
No matter what.
Yeah.
At the 8th pole, you better be right there in contention, or you're not going to win the race.
Yeah, two things. I think a lot of jockeys are going to be trying to get position out of the gate before the first turn, so that ensures some pace.
Right.
But to Dale's point that he just made, which I completely agree with, I was asked this morning, what 1/8 of a mile is the most important 1/8 in the Kentucky Derby? And I said, from the top of the lane, which is the quarter pole, to the 8th pole. I think that's the most important 1/8 of a mile in the race. And it's rare that the last eighth of a mile comes into play as to who's going to win or not win the Kentucky Derby. Usually, whoever's going to win is there by the eighth pole with the eighth of a mile to go.
Somebody could close for second, third.
Yeah,
That's
right.
not
And we've
always-
seen that a lot.
It's not always the horse on the lead at the eighth pole, because I do know what it feels like to think you're going to win the Kentucky Derby when Shackelford took the lead at the eighth pole.
Oh, God.
It ended up fourth. So I know what it feels like to think you're going to win.
And then that feeling, if you could bottle it, you could make a lot of money, huh?
If I could just been locked in that moment.
Yeah,
That's all they need.
You could sell that to people, that would be a wonderful
Second
feeling.
best feeling in a man's life.
We won't ask what the first.
This is a nighttime show,
Well,
right?
that's-
Right. This is internet, right?
Now there are honestly there are a ton of good closing horses lining up for this race. There's 6, 7, 8 horses that you almost look a little bit hard to separate.
Yeah, more than I can remember.
Yeah, maybe the separation is which horses are the real, just slightly plotter types that come on fast at the end,
Mhm.
or the types that have the turn of foot.
I think the horses that end up, I think this race is going to separate everybody and send them all different directions. It's
It
very
always
even
does.
right now. I think coming out of it, we're going to find out that a lot of them aren't that good.
Yeah.
And there's going to be, the real contenders are going to step up.
Yeah, it always does. And a lot of people were talking about this year's Derby not only being even, but it's just not a good crop this
But
year.
they say that every year.
But to make a statement that a crop is good or not good in May rather than wait until August or September is a real mistake.
You really need to wait till next year and see what they do. They finished up the year, how they did the breed
Right.
and how they're going on as 4-year-olds. Like the Shackelford group, we heard the same thing. And Animal Kingdom comes on to be a monster. Shackelford goes on and wins the medal. Now it's a 4-year-old, and it ends up being a real quality looking crop of horses that year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When you're developing these horses back as 2-year-olds and you're putting together some kind of an idea of how you might approach the 2-year-old season into the 3-year-old season, what is the difference between separating their talents, the physical part of it, understanding the horse and maybe how much more development they might have moving forward compared to the precocious 2-year-olds like you mentioned? And then how important is that mental side and really getting them to understand what their job is? Because horses only have a quarter of a mile run, really, for the most part, because you have to try to figure out when to use that.
Pat, they always told me they only have 1/8 of a mile.
Eighth of a mile.
And he said a real good one, the easy goers have 3/16 of a mile. 3/16 of a mile. And, that's why he was patient, Pat, and all those horses blow by him all the time, and he would come home that last 1/8 of a mile and nail them on the wire.
Do you ever look back with horses like this and like, oh, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have done that?
You know,
or-
these are the horses like we have that want to close and run them on a quarter, the ones that'll fool you getting them ready. That's why we treat every horse as their Derby horse until they prove they're not from before we ever start them. Because too many times we've been fooled by horses that are closers that want to go around 2 turns, and you don't think they're going very, very good. Like I said, I didn't think his horse was much horses when he was working in the morning, but we don't give him a chance very often in the morning to show that they're one run, closing, stamina type of horses.
That's right.
And once you see what a Brody Cos does when he passes everybody sprinting and closes and runs over them, that's wow. Now we got a real horse here.
Right.
And now you hope that they make that step from 2 to 3. It's a big thing over the winter. And it's amazing how much you can see the ones that make the progression, how they just seem to blossom and bloom up and become almost arrogant. And I've never had a good horse that wasn't extremely smart. I've been around greatness with horses a couple of times. Kitten's Choice, probably the best horse I was ever around, and I swear he could do simple math. He was such a smart horse.
Yeah.
Well, for me, so my horse being a late foal, it was the Jockey Club where he ran third in November. It was very, very wet racetrack.
Didn't he come up the rail in that race?
Yeah, we were very wet racetrack. We came to the rail. It was late in the day, so actually the Churchill had the lights on, and it just had a fresh rain. It had been raining all day, so literally the lights shining on the track looked like glass. The racetrack itself did, and my horse made an error turning for home and went over to a shot to a left lead when he was in the middle of his late run, probably cost him the race. But that was the race, finally at 2 turns, where I called the ownership and I said, we've got a real chance, and I was confident we did. But for my horse, who, being a late foal is not only does that contribute to late physical development, but as you mentioned, late mental development. So he had not put it together. And I knew that I needed to try to put him on a course from that point forward where very little, if any, traveling, and just be able to walk him out of the stall over to the track to run him. So I was lucky in that the fairgrounds had a series of races that allowed me to do that. So, he gained a lot of maturity in racing as well as physical appearance during that 4-month period from November to March.
Do you think the misfortune of the LeCompte was great? More of a simple trip, clearly the best horse. Do those misfortunes in the next 2 races help the horse as a learning experience, or is it a confidence?
Yeah, look, he's tough. My guy's tough, so I'm not worried about that. But those races are all tricky, right? I mean, Dale said it. We're going to line all these horses up, and some are going to come together and show that they belong, and then some are going to fall by the wayside. Mm-hmm. I think that any prep, it's after that prep and how those horses run later that shows whether, as we like to say, a key race. Right. And the Louisiana contingent in years past has never done very well in the Kentucky Derby. I think it's been since Grindstone, right? So, with that in mind...
and that's weird, isn't it? Because it seems like a perfect place to get ready for the Derby.
Well, it does, but the question is, are the horses just not as good as the rest of the nation? I mean, when you start separating the nation, California, New York, Florida, Midwest, and which is what I guess I would call Louisiana, we've yet to prove that we're a top area to come out of. But it changes all the time. Look, I mean, Oaklawn used to not be the spot, and Oaklawn suddenly has become the spot for the last few years. So we'll see.
Fairgrounds has been knocking on the door a little bit with their results in the Derby, and that they've Luke ran a good race, but several of them have come up for second, third, fourth. In recent years, it seems like a Louisiana Derby horse.
Revolutionary, right? He was a good winner.
Golden Soul, Commanding Curve. Yeah, they've had a lot of good results in the Derby without winning.
What about Gunrunner? I mean, you've gotten a good look at him. A lot of people like him. And, you beat him in the Kentucky Jockey Club. He ran 4th. And at that time, Tom, he looked to me like a horse that, hey, I'm thinking maybe moving forward, this is a 1-turn mile horse. Or he's a horse that maybe maxed out at a 1.8 miles, beat the kind of horses that he's better than, but not necessarily be his best distance. He seems to have taken a step forward, but you would happen to have, probably the best gauge on him.
So they've done a great job with him, right?
Yeah.
That was his only loss, was in the Jockey Club.
3 lengths from being perfect.
Right. And those 2 races in New Orleans are very, very good. Steve has really trained on this guy. That's right or wrong. You can look at his works. 6 furlongs, 5 furlongs, black letter work, 5 furlongs. And that must be what this horse thrives on, because he's run very, very well.
Most of Steve's horses, you don't see that out of.
Yeah.
Good point.
But he's in the Hall of Fame this year for a reason.
Yeah, and a deserving Hall of Fame.
A deserving Hall of Fame. He's a really good. He's one of the best there is, and obviously knows how to win races at Churchill. And I think he's done a heck of a job with this horse.
He's got 2 horses.
Creator looks as good as anybody out there training right now. And I was in Arkansas for his race. I thought that was extremely impressive.
It's another example of the horses that come from well back.
Right.
Yeah.
Sunbreaking News, another one like that. Whitmore's another one like that.
Yeah.
He's training these 2 horses very different.
And that's the sign of a good trainer.
Right.
That's the sign of a good trainer. It's not everything's on a program. It has to do this, this, and that. And of course, Steve, well-deserving Hall of Fame this year. Should have been last year.
Should have been.
You 2 would know.
Yeah, we've gone against him enough.
Yeah.
Let's talk Oaks a little bit, because I want to get an honest reaction from both of you guys. When you first heard the news, you both have Oaks fillies, first heard the news that Songbird was not going to run in the Oaks, do you take the attitude in your mind, well, you feel sorry for Hollendorfer, you feel sorry for the connections, they're not going to make the Oaks, or do you say yes?
First thing I thought was less of a chance to be second, because it'll be a bigger field, better chance to win.
Yeah.
And no, you never want to see a horse like that. Like I said, she's been a favorite in Derby, in my opinion. I'd have bet on her in there. And I texted Jerry when I first heard the news. And, sorry about your luck, but I'm sure if anybody, he'll have her back. And
I heard you started training again today.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's going to make sure they do right by the horse, he said it right.
Such a professional, and that's hard to do. It's if it's a little thing, especially that you think you can just train through and get there with. It's the Kentucky Oaks is a big deal, but it is going to make for a more interesting race, much more interesting race, I think, because she would have been a Rachel Alexander type of favorite and might not have gotten a big lineup like this to run against her, trying to be second.
So it's actually a benefit to Churchill and to handicapping, because the field's going to be bigger. The betting's not going to be isolated.
Same people are coming out,
but it's not going to be isolated on one horse. The betting's going to be spread out, so the pools will be substantially larger, in my opinion. The Oaks Derby double will change a lot, and value will be had just about everywhere. But as far as the news itself, I never want to wish that on anyone. I can't imagine what that's like in this big of an arena. And so I was very disappointed that the fans wouldn't get to see her run. And
I want to
she
see her
wouldn't
run.
be in the paddock. Yeah.
Would you have both been in the race
Yeah.
if she was in the race?
I would have been in the race
I would've
because my owner said we're running in the Oaks. Yeah.
I would have been there just because I'm home and I'm running in the Oaks and I'm home.
You don't have to lead her over very far, right?
You know, I wouldn't have shipped across country to run against her for, I don't care how much money they put up, we would have waited on the Black Eyed Susan.
Yeah.
But when we're right here and it's in our backyard, I'm going to lead over, and second's a huge deal in the Oaks. But that's literally what I thought the first time out. We got a less chance to be second, but we got a better chance of winning the race.
Now this race has some speed in it. You know, the Oaks does.
It does.
On paper at least, which your horse likes to do that as well, right? Or
Well,
she'll lay right off.
she'll lay right off of him. She was in front last time, but for most of the race.
Did she surprise you at Gulfstream? I mean, she's inexperienced. She's only had 2 races.
She didn't
right?
lose.
Well,
She would surprise me if she got beat.
okay. Well, the tote board told
To
us
win the
that.
Gulfstream Park Oaks, second race
You know,
of her life.
she ran so big first time out. She's a big old ghost after filly. Looks like a colt out there training. She's training as well as anything I've got right now. And we wouldn't normally wheel one back that fast and run in a grade 2, but she just seemed like the right type of horse to do it. And it was a short field, good fillies, and she just ran a monster race. And hopefully she'll step forward again, because she's going to need to step forward to win the Kentucky Oaks. But she's training like she's capable of it. I'm real excited about just watching her breeze tomorrow.
Very good. Tom, you were unfortunate with Motom, but you were fortunate with Venus Valentine in a way, right? Did that surprise you? Because it surprised the entire racing world.
Yes. So look, my horse is doing great going into the race, but there's no question that I benefited greatly from a race that really collapsed. They went very, very fast in the front end, and our plan was to try to pick up the pieces. Corey rode her that day, and not only did we pick up the pieces, but we found ourselves in front of the wire, so that was wonderful. And coming into the Kentucky Oaks, we've got to run better than we've run to be a real factor in a race like this. So what's a trainer to do? I mean, she's earned the right to be in the race. She deserves it. She's a grade 2 stakes winner. How do you make your horse competitive against these kind of fillies? And there's some really good fillies this year. So for our horse, we've got to find a way for her to be closer to the pace than what she is. There's nothing wrong with being behind those horses. There's a lot wrong with being 20 lengths behind instead of 15 or something like that. Our filly will go with blinkers for the first time in the Kentucky Oaks, and we'll ride our style of riding, although we won't change her from what she is, will be to be a little bit more aggressive out of the gate and trying to put her in a spot that doesn't make it impossible to come from behind in.
A lot of question marks in the race, right? Catherine Sophia is looking
Yeah, I mean, a lot of one turn.
Another deep field of horses,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, deep.
You know, you could see half this field winning the race and saying, oh yeah, I can see where that horse has won the race. You're not going to be scratching your head afterwards if maybe 3/4 of this field wins the race.
Yeah. I've seen more Oaks horses trained at Churchill this year looking really good doing what they're doing than Derby horses this year.
Just off looks, watching them train, I agree 100%.
And that's the same thing. You can go into this Oak saying, oh, there's no Songbird, it doesn't look that strong. But until we look at this race 6 months from now, or we look at who winds up being in,
First, you
races
don't know
like
when you
this
run the
half
main
time.
race for 90 days how well you ran. And you don't know really how great your horse can be until after the Spring Classics.
We're going to have a higher favorite in the Oaks this year than probably the Derby. Nyquist won't get pounded, I think, like we talked about, maybe 3-1, 7-2. We get up a 4-1, 9-2 favorite in this field.
I think Rachel's Valentino will get just the sentimental.
She's going to
play.
get sentimental play, and she deserves to be. I mean,
She had
she's a nice
a
filly.
great race off the bench.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
That was a grind, that
Yeah.
race the other day. They tried to fight to the wire and got run down, but that was a big effort.
We talked a little bit about this earlier, but are you guys, don't want the one post? What do you want? If you,
I don't think the
had to
one's as
choose?
big a deal in the Oaks.
No, I'm saying for the
Yeah, I
Derby.
agree.
Going
For the
back to
Derby?
the Derby, yeah. Going back to the Derby.
So I'm really superstitious, and I'm not going to even say what I'm hoping for, not hoping for, because superstition tells me
No,
don't
but
do it.
trainers aren't super.
So I'm not even going to comment on that, except to say that there's certain posts I do not want.
I've never heard.
And
Dale say-
I gave away the one already. That's as far as I'm going.
I've never heard Dale say no comment. So Dale.
No comment. No, I'll tell you what I'd like to be. I'd like to be like maybe the 12, somewhere in there in the middle, where maybe last horse in the first gate, or I don't know, is that 12 or 14?
14.
14, or what's the second to last one to load before the 20?
19 and
There's
19 and
8, 9,
19 and 9, yeah.
Somewhere in there.
So they load them 2 at a time.
But see, it's not as important for either one of our horses. I mean, neither one of us probably would want to have the one hole and try to break him behind. We may be further back than we'd ever want to be, but when you have horses like ours that are going to find their way and settle in mid-pack probably at best, it's not as important as if you need to be closer to the pace.
Is there any horse you don't want next to you in the gate?
Oh, that's a good question, right?
Kanishiwa.
Lonnie.
Yeah. Hopefully he's got his game face on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only Japanese word I know. Sure. I
What
don't know
about
what
an
it
off?
means. I hope it's not a cuss word, but I'd rather just soon not have him.
Google Translate. Can we get Google Translate? What about an off track? We know you can handle it.
I can handle. We're going in overtime, by the way.
Yeah, look, my horse would love an off track if that's what it turns out. I don't see the. I thought you knew those Japanese words, happy ending. Those are 2 words you know.
No. That day I saw you there, we weren't supposed to talk about it.
Kentucky Jockey Club.
Yeah. So anyhow, well, my horse will handle an
Don't
off track.
start it.
No problem.
Okay. Yeah.
Brian, any final thoughts? Because we're hitting overtime.
If your horse runs the race, I'll ask both.
First of all, you should never give me a gift stick to the restaurant next door before the
Are
show.
you hungry?
Right. I'm ready to go spend it. Go ahead.
If your horse runs the race, who's going to run second to you in the Kentucky Derby?
Oh, jeez.
Come, let's at least get one answer. We're
Motown.
Brody's cause.
All right. Yeah.
Let's exclude our 2 horses and say,
No.
and then pick another one.
I'm
Okay?
gonna, if in mine, I say creator.
You like Creator?
Ask us.
I do. I think he's trained super and he looks good. And this is Asmussen's year. It seems like.
Too close.
Not to win a Derby, but just having a really good year for what he rebounded from. If he was to win the Derby,
He's got
nobody
4
deserves
horses
more.
in the Oaks too, right?
Yeah, 4 in the Oaks. So he's got things going on right now.
I'm not ready. I really don't want to give an answer on that, but I'll tell you who does look good out there. Is my man Sam.
We're not going to
Did
tell
you
you.
see my man Sam out there? I think he looks really good in the
Like
mornings.
Sam?
Another close. Well, he closed to you in the Bluegrass.
Yes, he did. And he looks really good. And he closed out of the 14 hole,
That's right.
and he nailed it. Cost me an inch from getting the second one into that.
Another 100 yards. My guy.
I'm gonna tell you what. Look,
What race are you watching? We have yours up, galloping out of the wire. I gotta go.
tomorrow and Sunday there are a lot of horses working, and I think there'll be minimum 2 spots will open up. Hopefully it's not because of my horse, but I think 2 spots minimum will open up by Monday or Tuesday.
This weekend, the dropouts will start showing up. The ones that realize that they're not
So
going to be able to.
if you made the over and under 2, and I had to bet one way or the other, I think I'd bet
I
over.
need 5.
Really?
I need 4 on the 5th
Yeah.
one.
Did we have 2 scratches
Cherry
after the
wine.
race was drawn last year?
We did.
right?
Cherry
Yeah.
wanted to get in, yeah.
You want Cherry Wine?
If Cherry Wine got in, especially if it rained, I mean, he's one of those middle type of horses that we've seen win every 3rd Derby. That if he got everything going his way and the track came up sloppy, somebody got stopped, that he could get the job done. He's a really nice horse.
Now, if he doesn't get in, is he going straight to Pimlico?
I think so. I think I put some thought in today of running back into Mile Pat Day as a work going into Pimlico, because it'd almost be like working a mile, even if he didn't win. I mean, you'd want to win, but if you didn't, and then go into Pimlico 2 weeks later, it's $250,000. That's when I started thinking about when I looked at the purse.
Yeah, well, also the time between, right? You got a pretty good separation.
Yeah. Well, you only have 2 weeks to the Preakness, but you're coming off of.
No, I mean without a race.
I would if I waited from Bluegrass. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Preakness, you got a lot of 6 week separation. Where if I could slip that, I'm going to work him that day anyway.
Yeah, I get it.
What would you do if you were?
Jeez, I'd run for $250,000.
Well, you haven't answered the question yet. Let's talk. Yeah.
Look, your horse is very capable at a 1-turn mile, which it is, right?
Yeah,
It's
it
a
is
1-turn mile.
1-turn mile.
Yeah, I'd run.
And who else is in the race? That's a consideration.
Well, I think it's a pretty good race.
And it's a good race. It's going to be the horses that aren't getting in, just like him. But they say it's going to be 6 or 7 horses.
Yeah.
So if you were to go out there and work even on second, and pick up 50,000. I remember when we celebrated for a week on a $50,000 pot.
I'm going to be Joe for a second, okay?
Oh boy.
Are you surprised that Nyquist is working before the races rather than just in the morning?
Everything Nyquist has done to surprise me. But like you said, Doug's already won it, and I haven't. So who's to say we're not going to second guess him? But everything he's done since he
Well, again,
won
this is
Florida
Joe
has surprised
talking.
me,
This
right?
is Joe talking, so don't make fun of me. Well, I've never trained
I'm out of the
horses
shop.
before. So tell me, why is he doing that? Why is he working him before the race?
I've trained horses my entire life, and I can't answer that question. But like I said again, he's a good horse trainer, and he's doing it for a reason.
Look, and I'm not making fun of him asking that question, but I'm curious because I don't know either.
I don't understand it, but believe me, when I see Doug next time, I'm going to ask him.
He's doing it.
He'll talk to you. He'll tell you.
Doug is the nicest guy in the world.
I'm going to ask him to try to learn something because the guy's already won dirt. He's obviously doing it for a reason. There's some thought process involved.
He's doing it as a favor to the media because there's so many workers at Churchill that if the media is at Churchill.
That's absolutely not true. Nobody's going to do the media a favor and cause themselves and not prep their Derby horse the proper way.
Because if all those horses are working in the morning
No,
at Churchill,
that sounds good.
get to Keeneland to see Nyquist.
If he told you that because you're in the media, God bless you if you believe it. But
He could tell the media that it
Right.
might not be true, but he can make it seem. Because then he gets donuts and he gets cookies and he gets all kinds of things.
Dan, why did you go to Florida? There's probably only one or two reasons why.
you keep asking me about Doug's horse. I don't.
Look, there's a million reasons why I went to Florida.
To me, there's 1 million reasons to go, and I agree with him on going. Why not go? And exaggerate. We haven't talked about him at all.
That's not my fault. I'm not the host. These guys are.
That's what I want to talk about. That's what I want to talk about. Is we beat him twice. I don't care about the rest of it.
Do you have anything
No,
else to say?
he's a good horse, getting good right now. And that's the one jockey in this country, when he's on his game and rides a race, can change the outcome. He's as good as they come. And I talked to him a couple of days ago, and he's excited about getting here with this horse.
That's his brother's horse. I mean, you think
That'd be a good story.
you
There's
get
so
every
many-
ounce of his energy in that race?
Yeah, he'll finish with it, right?
Right.
He's ridden a Derby horse or two for you.
He's ridden 3 for me, and believe me, if he'd been available, I'd be happy to have him on cherry wine maybe. But I mean, if we get in and we'll ride Robbie, because it's the same old story as Corey. Who knows the racetrack? He's second leading stakes rider in history to Pat Day right here, and he's been my go-to man. We won the Breeders' Cup, the second highest priced horse in history, and I won 3 Breeders' Cups. He's won 2 of them, so we've always gotten lucky together. But Kent and I've gotten lucky together too. One day you want to strangle him, and the next day you want to hug him. But that's a nice horse too. We left him out because basically he's on a different continent when he's in California.
Is he one of those that doesn't listen to instructions,
Can't.
or one of those that
Can't.
Can't listen to
He's
instructions?
going to do what he wants to do.
Yeah. Okay. The good ones do what they're going to do.
They're going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
But
So he's in that category.
When you get the best Kent, there's nobody better in the country, and you get him most of the time. And he's been riding this great out in California all winter, and that's another game changer. I just haven't seen enough of him to comment on it.
Someone
I would
said
sit down
the
and
Derby was the best performance out of any.
It was a big effort. It was a big effort. It's not like Kent to win by 6. He usually, if he's in front by 4 to 16th, but he's usually pulling up. But
What was your first Derby that you remember?
Shark,
You
the
saw
first
them
one
all.
I saw, first one I ever went to was, that I really remember. So I was 10 years old, 77 Seattle Slew, and I haven't missed one since.
My first one was '79 Spectacular Bid.
2 good years.
Yeah, that was he's a great horse. Well, they're both great horses. Spectacular Bid disappointed he didn't win the Triple Crown because he was very deserving. He was a great
He
horse.
was. Anybody you talk to that was in that era will say that he may have been the best horse they'd ever seen.
Yeah. No, he came back for his 4-year-old season, and he just basically, did the parade around the country and ran everywhere and just picked up all the chips everywhere he went. And just he was a great
He was
horse.
great. I told you the story. I told you the story here before about Seattle Slew. I think we were talking. He was my first Derby, and I saw where he was getting sick, and I was wondering, he didn't have much time left, and I called the farm. I said, I just want to come over and pet him. Can you let me come see him? And they said, come on. And they got him out, and we had the whole thing, the whole deal. They had him all brushed off, put him up on this little mound. We always showed him off. When I went up to pet him, so much about ripped my arm off.
Who's me?
You don't like me near as much as I like you, but I did get to pet him before he did pass
I read
away.
a story about him that he liked rock and roll music. So he's out in California, and his groom would leave a little transistor radio by his stall on the rock and roll channel. And it was during the World Series, so a groom from another barn came over and changed it to the World Series on the radio, and Slew went berserk. he didn't like that at all. So he was a great horse.
Seattle Slew did something in that Kentucky Derby that I don't think we'll ever see a horse do again. Speed horse, and he broke bad.
He didn't break bad. You know what happened is that, and Julio Espinosa worked for me for a long time, and he was one of the leading riders here in history. And they had 2 horses, Smiley Adams, that year in the race. And Julio's job, I don't know, was he on Run Dusty Run, Dust Commander, I think were the 2 in the race. Julio's job was to take him out at the gate, to get Seattle Slew out. And he said he wiped him completely out. He said he knew he did his job, and he's going into the first turn. Here, this big black Suburban comes just galloping past him, and just drew off with every stride. And he was just That's true greatness, and that's the best thing about this game is every once in a while you get to be around greatness.
Right.
You know, we have so much social media out there now, so nothing is missed, right? But after the Louisiana Derby with Motom, I was thinking about Bid's Florida Derby, Spectacular Bid's Florida Derby with Ronnie Franklin on him, and Ronnie rode a bad race. And believe it or not, on YouTube, there's a segment off of ABC where they're wearing the yellow jackets back then, and it's Eddie Arcaro and Jim McKay. And McKay and Arcaro are discussing Ronnie Franklin's ride, and they crucify him. You know, and I was like, wow. I mean, they really let him have it. He's a young kid that, you know, I mean, he's not even media enough savvy to answer the questions correctly, and yet they kept him on. Mm-hmm. And he rode a great Kentucky Derby and won the Kentucky Derby for Bud Delp. And
he should have taken him out by the Belmont.
He was crucified at Belmont a little
bit. He went awfully fast. Mm-hmm. But you know, one of the side highlights of I'm the one bitching to leave, but one of the side highlights of my career is
keep it rolling.
We took a limousine ride to the city during the Belmont one of the years we were in the Belmont to do that media thing they have down there, and they put us in a private limousine, Tammy and I, and it was with Billy Turner and his wife. And all the way to Manhattan from Belmont Park and back, I got to listen to C.L. Slew stories. Mm-hmm. And you know, that's the things that people don't see behind the scenes that goes on. And 2 years ago, sitting on the trainer stand, it was 10:30. Track had been closed a half an hour. And it was me and Alan Jerkins, the chief, and Lafitte Pincat, Angel Cordero, Cinto Vasquez, and Georgie Velasquez. They were all there for some reason, and me just sitting there like a fly on the wall, listening to those guys tell old time stories. Those are the great things about this sport that more people, and now with social media, are starting to get a glimpse of.
Alan Jerkins was the greatest horse trainer I've ever been around. Now, I never was on the West Coast, but when I was an assistant trainer in New York, and I was stuck at the barn from 5 to 5 every single day, and on the off days I'd go to the track kitchen and eat lunch, and there Jerkins would be.
He's also the greatest man ever trained.
Yeah, he's great guy, and like he would go to eat dinner at the end of the day, and then he'd come back to his barn and check on his horses again. I mean, his obsession was like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, I could never do what he did as a trainer, but man, oh man, he was the best, period.
I was fortunate enough to be able to go to dinner with him 2 or 3 nights a week the last 5 years of his life when we were at Gulfstream Park, and to sit there and listen to him. He remembered every horse that he ever had, how far he worked them, what he did with them, and every horse that he competed with around him. It was amazing.
Yes. 2 trainers I never heard a bad word about, Billy Turner and Alan Jerkins.
Yeah, they're great guys. But you know, as long as
Billy Turner's still
look, I mean,
around.
you can start talking about Triple Crown history. You can keep us here for another 2 hours because I love that stuff, right? But you say that Seattle Slew, that was something you'd never seen. I mean, when you talk about Triple Crown performances of any horse, and I know everybody likes to look at Secretariat's Belmont, but I think Secretariat's Preakness was the most outstanding Triple Crown race I've ever
But you look
seen.
at the Belmont, by the Belmont, nobody would run against them.
Yeah.
If we'd have had every Triple Crown horse we ever had going for the Triple Crown, would have been Triple Crown winners if they had run against those other 4 horses. That day, but you're right, his Preakness race
It's phenomenal.
was phenomenal.
I mean, he looked literally like he was gonna sprout wings. I mean, I know that's an overused term, but he looked like his stride was so giant, like he was getting ready to take off the ground.
And you talk about Secretariat, go back to Alan. Alan wanted to know why he wasn't in the movie. So he beat him twice.
He would have been a villain.
Yeah, he would have been a villain. He beat him twice.
You need that.
Yeah.
All right, well, like you
That's
said,
it.
we could go on another 2 hours,
Yeah.
but we got to find out who the Saints picked.
Oh yeah, good point. Well, my daughter's in the audience. She'll know before any of us, I'm sure.
NFL draft, yes, the NFL draft is going on. Tom, before we go, are you running Motom? I mean, are you going to win one for the Saints? The Saints haven't won in a couple of years, and you're the trainer of the horse that runs for Tom Benson, Gail Benson, and do you feel like this is something that really comes back to New Orleans as a big deal?
Yeah, well, look, I said that the horse is a bit overhyped, right? And in New Orleans, he's really, along with his stablemate, Tom's Ready, he's really overhyped because the ownership has made sure that the city has gotten a chance to be involved. A lot of things out there you can read about the 2 horses. A lot of ways you can go on social media and see what their preparation and everything. So it really is a city event. And I happen to have some inside information that Mr. Benson has a 150-seater plane flying up Saturday morning of the Derby. And that plane will be going back to New Orleans around 8:30 at night So they're going to have a big contingent here. I don't know where they're putting those 150 people, but they are coming. So
if you win, will you get on and go back for the party?
you know what? If I win, if I happen to win, I wouldn't mind going back and going to my mom and dad's house. You know, but my mom and dad live in Mississippi, and you look, I don't know how you do it, but I don't even let myself think like that. I mean, I know when they go on the gate, I'll be thinking, what if? But I don't even let myself do that right now. I don't want to do it. Horse racing is such a cruel game.
I find myself trying to envision the race.
Yeah.
How it's going to unfold. When I finally get that vision, then we run well, then I'm comfortable, and I don't think about it anymore.
But I mean, I don't think.
But I'll tell you one thing.
Do you think of the what ifs? If I win, this might happen or that might happen.
The only thing I'm going to tell you, what if on, they won't write the article the next day. Was at the barn at 4:30 checking legs, like they do about Wayne Lucas all 4 times he won the race. So they might find me for the prelim. They might need a trainer.
I remember him winning at Derby, and they said, "What'd you do to celebrate?" He said, "I went home and I had some chocolate milk before I went to sleep." That'll be you. You'll do that?
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
Yeah, I got a big picture of that.
If I wake up Sunday, I might come Tuesday.
Chocolate milk and what?
And bourbon.
All right. Well, as always, guys, we appreciate you guys coming out. We again could go on forever about different things and the history and the Triple Crown and your horses, but Dale's got to get to dinner. We got to get to the draft.
Yeah, we do indeed.
Safe trips. I mean,
Yeah,
get a good trip.
absolutely.
Get a fair shot.
May the best horse win, that's all.
For sure.
Right? What's the old guy in New York? May the best horse win.
Yeah, right. Harvey Pack.
Harvey Pack.
Yeah.
All right, may the horse
All
be
right.
with you.
Thanks,
May
guys.
the horse be with you, right?
Thanks, man. Appreciate it very much.